Welcome to Career Tools. This is Sarah.
And I'm Mark.
Today's podcast, Delegating to the Floor, 4 Directs, part 1 of 2.
As always, our content has been crafted by humans and is now certified by Proudly Human. The questions this cast answers are, how do I find more time to do valuable work? What task should I stop doing at work? And the answer is not everything, folks. And how do I get my boss to agree to me dropping some tasks to focus on the right ones?
If you want answers to these questions and more, keep listening.
Your communication style is costing your relationship at work right now, and you don't have to travel to fix it. The Effective Communicator Conference is available virtually, so you can get the same behavioral frameworks, the practice opportunities, and the same result from wherever you work. One focus day online, real skills you'll use Monday. Register for our upcoming virtual Effective Communicator Conference on August 24th at manager-tools.com/ECC.
So, Mark, today we're talking about, for our Career Tools listeners, how and when to delegate to the floor.
Right.
And folks, we tell Manager Tools managers, not that you necessarily work for one, although I really hope you do, to delegate as much as they can to their directs so that those managers can do only the things that they can do. Because there's plenty of things, that your manager must do and can't delegate to you. But many managers, many people above you aren't delegating all of those things that you could very well do.
I think it's fair at this point to say, Sarah, we tell the managers, you've got to delegate more, you got to delegate more, you got to delegate more. And almost across the board, they resist. Because it's just easier if I do it myself. My direct doesn't know it as well as me. I can do it faster. I can do it better, which of course is technically true, but doesn't lead to growth, either for the manager in terms of doing higher level tasks and the direct learning higher level tasks. Anytime the organization can push a task from one level to the lower level in the structure, that's a net good for the organization in terms of costs.
Yep. Oh, and development and succession planning. Yeah,
exactly.
There's a list of things that hold managers back, cause them not to delegate. And I would say they're all good reasons. They're wrong thinking, but
yes,
managers there's a good intent.
I misunderstood when you said good reasons.
Oh, yeah. And folks, to be clear also, I talk to managers. I train managers almost every single week. And it doesn't matter where you work, who you work for, what you do for a living. I would suggest that the 3 most common reasons for not delegating are the same everywhere we go. My directs can't do it as well as I can. It takes longer to teach someone to do it than do it myself. And it is, they don't have time either. And yet we keep telling them to delegate down to you, individual contributors. And then we tell them to allow the individual contributors to do what we call, and what we're talking about today, delegate to the floor.
So that the least important things in your organization are not getting done. Because we all know we have too much work to do, and that's the way organizations are built. But that means some stuff is not going to get done.
Yes, that's exactly it. And also, individual contributors, no fear here, when we're talking to managers about this idea that they delegate to you and allow you to delegate to the floor, we also tell them that they need to provide air cover for the things that don't get done, that they've permitted you not to do any longer, essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's important we say that now. Because if they're thinking we're about to teach them a way that you can choose what part of your job not to do, even if we had the slickest way in the world for them not to do it, the vast majority of you listening will go, I'm sorry, I've never met you. I know this is a good show. I like the guidance. I've used it. It works. But no, I'm not doing that. Rest assured, folks, we're going to solve that problem for you in this cast. Okay? You don't have to decide. You don't.
Yeah. And to go a step further, folks, you don't have to have a Manager Tools manager to get the benefits of this activity either. We may not be in your manager's ear telling them all of these things, but essentially what we're talking about today is reverse engineering of what we would train managers on, typically. You can engage in the delegation to the floor activity. You just have to be smart about what you do, and don't delegate to the floor and get a little air cover from your boss. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, exactly. So here's our outline. First of all, you're going to have to analyze your work. Okay. And again, by the way, your boss, if your boss is a manager tools manager, they should know how to work with you on this delegating to the floor technique. But if not, this still works as well. Your boss might raise some eyebrows, but your boss also will probably be very impressed that you've thought through your value to the organization, as long as you don't fall prey of just delegating the stuff you don't like or don't want to do. So we're going to talk about analysis and how to do that analysis. Then we're going to talk about how to choose what to delegate to the floor. Then we're going to talk about reviewing your list with your boss. You can't just not do work. I'll never forget when one of my directs said, "Oh yeah, I don't do the important things. I do the interesting things." And I thought, wow, because I only want to talk to you about the important things. Interesting. No pun intended. And then last, there's 4 step. You have to be able to deal with pushback, and we'll tell you exactly how to handle that. When you delegate to the floor in concert with your manager, you have a defensible position. You are not at risk. Promise.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start by going over how to analyze your work. And actually, before we do that, Mark, it occurs to me, it strikes me that maybe before we dive into this analysis, a little explanation for our Career Tools listeners about the organization, the why behind it might be helpful.
Yeah. So, folks, if you don't know, if you haven't listened to Manager Tools, there are 4 managerial behaviors that are by far the most useful in terms of creating results and retention, which are managers' core responsibilities everywhere in the world. Those 4 things are: know your people, in other words, build trust; talk about performance, okay, that's feedback, okay; ask for more, that's the coaching model, right? And then pushing work down. And the reason why there's a human response to organizational responsibility that causes people to want to avoid, when they can, not always, but when they can, to defer to their boss to make a decision. So the phrase I like to use is their fingerprints are not on the murder weapon. In other words, that my boss made that decision and I'm just enacting it. And if you've ever felt that way, you want your boss to make the decision, you're normal. Now, in really great organizations, there is a defense against that by bosses being assertive about pushing work down. This also goes to something known as Managerial Economics 101, which says something very simple. If Sarah is my boss and she can do a thing, run a meeting, for instance, but she knows I can do a thing, or relatively quickly I could learn to do that thing, then I should be doing that thing because, and this sounds terrible to think of it this way, but I'm going to treat you like adults and say, because I'm cheaper labor. Okay. If a job can be done by a boss and a subordinate, the boss should be being done by the subordinate, despite the fact that managers say, no, the quality is higher with me. The fact is that manager is comparing her ability today, after a year or 2 in the job, where she's had 100 reps or 300 reps or even just 20 reps, to your first time doing it if she were going to delegate to you. And what she should be comparing your first rep with this new delegation she's going to give to you, she should be comparing it to the first rep she had, which she wasn't very good at it either. And what's more, she probably, if her boss hadn't delegated to her in advance, is doing it in the role. Okay. The beauty of her delegating to you before you're in the role is she can provide air cover to you when you mess it up a little bit, which her boss didn't give it to her. She got promoted. She's expected to be a manager. And now suddenly she has no air cover for this new stuff she's learning. And that's a very, very risky thing.
What I call lovingly, do the job with training wheels.
Exactly. Yeah. So what happens is what you probably don't realize if you're relatively new to your professional career, and it's okay not to know it. I didn't know this till I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
That the organization wants to try to push work down to the lowest possible level. And all you have to do is ask yourself, do I like decisions being made 3 levels above where the work is actually done? No. Nobody does. They think if you're doing the work, you should make the decisions around the work, right?
Right.
Well, that's exactly what the delegation cascade does. The CEO lands a new billion-dollar client. He can't handle all of his job. He delegates something to one of his directs. They're already busy and they delegate down and so on, which, by the way, should teach you a lesson. When your subordinates are busy, when you become a manager and you have subordinates, or maybe you're a manager now and you're just still listening to Career Tools, welcome back. When you're a manager and you get delegated something from your boss, that's a clue that you should delegate. Now you say, wait, my boss can't delegate to me. I'm fully busy already. Well, if everybody's fully busyness, if everybody's fully busy all the time, then that basically says the organization can't grow. We can't do new things because busy.
Yeah. And that takes us back to, and I'm sure we have a podcast for this, Mark. I'm sure it's like a executive tools podcast. I'll make sure I link to it. Takes us all the way back to the purpose of the organization, right? Which, if you're unfamiliar with it, folks, is to serve society. And I don't know if you've noticed, society always wants newer and faster and shinier and better. The work will can never stop coming in at the top of your organization, which also means, tying it back to today's topic, the work can never stop falling out of the bottom either. Because at some point, this continuation of work coming in at the top, which again will not stop happening, will have to stop happening if we don't continue to remove it at the bottom as well.
Absolutely. Plus, and to your point about why the organization exists, what is the first responsibility of every executive? It's a generic responsibility for every executive, even including the CEO, to grow organizational results. So if you're going to grow and you have roughly the same number of people, those people are going to have to learn to do more. Well, over time, you are always learning how to do your job more, but we want the jobs to be pushed down to the lowest possible level. We actually want to push harder than we probably should, because there's no way to prove perfect balance in between job responsibilities. And so that's why the safety valve in the delegation cascade is delegating to the floor, where people at the bottom of the organization also have too much to do, but they are given some relief from that and not held accountable because they don't have anybody to delegate to. So that kind of, hopefully, did that
I think
answer
that's
your
helpful.
question,
I think
Sarah?
that's helpful. Yeah. And there's a few podcasts, folks, that'll give you some of the background. Managerial Economics 101. I want to say the other one, Mark, that I'm thinking about is Wait,
Juggling
We're
Koan?
Already Busy, Juggling Koan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will make sure that all of those are linked at the bottom of this one, folks. If you're listening, if you need a little bit more depth on the background piece, there'll be plenty of links at the bottom of this one today.
Sitting on an interview panel without a structured process means your team is making guesses and calling it evaluations. Different questions, different impressions, no shared standard. The effective hiring manager teaches every person involved in the hiring how to ask behavioral questions, take useful notes, and make consistent decisions that hold up. Available for individuals and teams at manager-tools.com/EHMC.
Okay, so that takes us then to analyzing your work. And folks, before we cover exactly what to delegate, we need to cover first why you would want to delegate, although we kind of started down that path. Most of us say we're too busy at work. Very few of us go home at the end of the day with all of our work done.
No one does.
No one does. Exactly.
I mean, they might say it's done if they can't take it home. There are some jobs where you literally cannot take your work home, even with laptops and everything else. So you could say, I'm done work, pauhana, as the Hawaiians say. But that's not actually so if you haven't met all your deadlines, right?
Right.
You did all of the work that you could, but it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, most of us also have some projects we'd love to do, or things we'd like to get organized, or additional responsibilities that we'd love to take. But we just can't work out how to find the time to do those extra things. So those next level things, those helping me grow kind of things, they tend to get relegated to the back of your desk to collect dust. And delegating to the floor is a way to help professionals find that
to get
time.
to those things. Also, I would argue, some people won't necessarily agree with me. I would argue that if you want to get to those fun, interesting projects, the ones that you think will make you stand out, delegating to the floor is a tool for you. Now, there's some risk here. if your boss is not an ethical person, there may be some risk, but I would argue the vast majority of your listening here, your boss is ethical enough that you can do this. But delegating to the floor is a tool that you can get to the fun stuff to reinvigorate you and go, this is fun. I like working so hard today. I worked so hard today. I got my normal work done by 2, and I gave myself 90 minutes that I could work on this thing that I've been thinking about for a while, and it's been gathering dust on the back of my desk.
It's been gathering dust. Exactly.
Now, look, folks, we're not saying just don't do parts of your job, okay? We're more sophisticated than that. And this is an organizational system that you play a part in. So it's not like you're going to be a rebel without a cause. There's a legitimate systemic process that is happening here, and you need to play your role. And nobody's going to tell you this role, because the 99.9% of managers in the world, including frontline managers, actually it's 99 point, it's 6 Sigma 99, they don't know about these systems. Now you could argue, why don't they? I'm sorry, we should make every manager take organizational systems, organizational theory. But then you would argue, well, why don't they teach management in MBA programs? And MBA programs would say they do. And by management, they mean how to run a big company with strategy, operations, and people. But no MBA program that I'm aware of does anything but pay lip service to the actual management of people and how work flows through the organization. So we're not saying just do nothing. And we're not saying if you want to clear out your time so you can have a lunch and relax and catch your breath and so on. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about contributing to your organization at a higher level by being aware of your role in the delegation cascade when you are an individual contributor.
That's exactly it. Trying to find time to do value add activities. And again, folks, even though these are value add activities, there's still risk in taking this approach. But we're going to talk about in today's cast, the fact that we'll mitigate that by being as smart as possible. And I mean, I got to tell you, sometimes you might recommend to your manager that you stop doing a thing and they push back because they think to themselves, well, I've clearly poorly communicated to this person how important that thing is. That happens too. Lack of communication in organizations.
Oh, there are a lot of managers who just say, you have to do everything, and you have to do everything to a super, super high standard. But it's interesting. We're candid here. We're ethical. And we say, hey, there's a little bit of risk here, but we'll explain it in a way to reduce your risk down to marginally zero. But there's also risk in what you're doing now if you don't know about this. You're defending yourself from more work from your boss because I'm too busy. I'm busy, right? It's all the busyness defense. Okay. But your boss is delegating to you because he got something given to him by his boss, and your boss was already fully busy too. Busyness is not a defense in organizations. It isn't anywhere. So you better develop some system for dealing with the new stuff that comes in when you're busy. One of which is, by the way, every day you should be getting slightly better at your job and becoming a little bit more efficient. And so what 3 months ago might have taken you 8 hours a day will now take you 7.5 hours a day. And you have a new half hour to focus on something new. But don't kid yourself. You might hear this as a little bit of risk because you don't want to get in trouble for not doing something. And that's fair. But there's also a hidden risk in what you're not doing, which is you're not developable. You don't want to do more. You're not a volunteer. You're not willing to step up. And your boss has already been through her transition to being a manager. She knows she wasn't ready. She knows she didn't get any training, any help, any development. I know that sounds selfish here, but unless she listened to manager tools, and she's going to want help. And if she delegates to you and you push back, you're saying, yeah, I want to stay right here for the rest of my career.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's also that risk inherently in this lack of accepting delegation, lack of delegating to the floor, Mark, that looks and sounds like I don't have practice. I haven't developed this muscle. My job gets bigger. I become a manager. And the only way I know to overcome this massive workload increase sounds like work more hours, which is a recipe for disaster. And so many people find themselves in that position, right? They don't know how to handle it. And it just spreads into their evenings and weekends. And they don't know how to do this activity, this prioritization, this removal of less useful work because they've never had to do it. And now they're leading other people. And then those people obviously won't know how to do it. And
Yeah. Be really careful about thinking the answer is more hours, folks. It's not sustainable. we've been talking for 21 years here at Manager Tools about family first. You can't put family first. You can't say family first and then do work first. You can't say one thing and then do another. So now we're getting into activity. For a week or two, I want you to write down everything you do. From the reports you create, the statuses you update, the calls you take, the calls you make, the emails you send and receive, maybe by topic in person, the decisions you make, and the meetings you go to. There's a thing called a Drucker time log, which we actually have a podcast about. There's also other ways to do a time log where you can actually get a random number generator that dings every once in a while, and you just write it down. And after enough randomness, it's an accurate portrayal of your work after a couple of weeks. Drucker time log, I think, is like every 10 minutes.
Yes, it is.
You're supposed to write down what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So
you write it all down.
Yeah, you write it all down. And folks, in order to help you with this exercise as we go through the podcast, we're going to lay out an example so that you can visualize the delegation to the floor activity. Now, our licensees can print off the list. It's written in the show notes. Those of you who are not yet licensees, we would encourage you to become a licensee. And fun fact, the first 30 days of any license type are free. So if you want the show notes to this one, you can become a licensee and download them and print them off in the first 30 days. So let's imagine in our example that you work in a project management office. Your title is PMO manager, but actually there's only you. So you're really not a manager so much as a person that does the work. So your list might look like this.
And then, by the way, this list came from a PMO manager who had no directs.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a direct from an actual time study done by a Manager Tools manager, PMO manager anyway, with no directs.
So the first thing on the list is emails on Project X regarding quality requirements.
Then the next thing on the list is team meeting.
Mm-hmm. Going to one-on-ones with your manager, right? Because this is an individual contributor.
Right. Reporting on project status.
The Project X weekly meeting.
Sending notes to your manager about Project X weekly meeting.
Mailing the hard copy confirmations on citing quality requirements.
Compiling project kickoff materials for Project Y.
Hand delivering project kickoff materials.
Help resolve issues with payments for Project Z.
Ordering the refreshments for the project kickoff meeting.
Resolve the issue for Project Manager X with library materials for previous project.
Compile cost reports for Project X from purchase orders.
Shelve project materials for Project A.
And then ultimately complete status report for Project Manager Y. So that's a list of some duties that are associated with this PMO manager role so that we can continue to think those through in today's podcast in our example. Thanks for joining us, folks. We hope you join us again next week as we continue today's topic. Now, help us help others and tell your friends. And of course, follow, rate, and review our podcast. And remember, 5 stars only, please.